Welcome to Beauties and Beasties, the independent pest podcast for the UK.
Hello. How are we doing?
Okay, young man. How the devil are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm on holiday technically at the moment, which is lovely, I have to say. First time in a long time. I think I'm actually going to have a Christmas. It's going to be something quite special, actually. That being said, are we all set for next week's podcast as well? We're not taking a break, are we? Beauties and Beasties never sleeps.
No, we're going to carry on. We're going to get through it. It's a Friday evening, so we're going to do a podcast, aren't we? We're going to have a year's roundup. So there isn't a guest on. We're just going to have a crack about the full year of podcasting.
Yeah, well, we've been going a little longer than a year, haven't we? It's been, what is it now? It's 16 months, 18 months, something like that.
I think Hugh worked it out the other day. We've had 68 guests, I think is what we've had on the podcast. And we are at this moment in time fully booked until the middle of February with new guests as well, like not recycling any.
Who would have thought, eh? Who would have thought people would be so interested in listening to us two bellends chatting away on a Friday night?
Shit.
I know. I'm quite humble, actually. And so big thank you to everyone listening, because we obviously wouldn't do it if there wasn't people to talk to, and we wouldn't have guests booked up until next February if you guys weren't listening. So thank you very much, everyone involved. You're as big a part of this as we are.
Yeah. How's your week been?
Week's been good. What have I done? It's a bit of a close down. Day job has been running down, which has been quite nice. Now, officially finished yesterday. So actually, I don't know what to do with myself, because for years and years and years of being a consultant or working with animals, Christmas was never a thing. Holidays were never a thing. Now I have holidays, man. Don't know what to do with myself. It's quite crazy.
Yeah.
How about you? What are you doing?
We've had a good week. I know I'm not going to spoil everything. I spoke to Alex earlier on in the day about a particular issue. Things have moved forward an awful lot since then, and I'm not going to spoil it. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. There's a little bit happening, but hopefully on Monday we will be able to give everybody an update on some stuff which might be really, really good. It might be a big change for the industry. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but it might be something which some people are hopeful of. I just can't say a great deal until I've dotted my I's and crossed my T's. As ever, we're always trying hard, aren't we? So let's see how that works out. And then work-wise, I've never had a winter like it, Alex. I'm glad Christmas is coming. I was just saying to Hugh, can you remember when not long ago you said to me, "Fucking hell, Sean, it's usually me that looks haggard. Now it's you. You need a shave and a haircut." And that's exactly how I feel. I feel like I need to go and lie in the bath and fucking sort myself out, because I'm a total mess. I've been flat out busy doing all sorts, running around like a blue arse fly, getting stuff done. So this winter has been a really kind winter to us. But then of course, as a business, you always wonder what happens if it changes, what happens if it's not good to us, what happens if we start to struggle. So I
think going back to the people who listen to our podcast, and I think this is a really sort of this is where it started really, and this is where we are. 70% of our industry is micro businesses. 70% of our business industry is, when I say micro businesses, that's classified as 1 to 5 people. But let's be honest, that's in reality in our industry is one person. The vast majority of our industry are people working alone. And with that, you have to be technician, administration, logistics manager, procurement manager. You have to be the guy looking for work as well. You have to be the one to sort of like sign the contract. And it's nice to have a break. It really is. But I fully understand, and I can feel it from having been there myself, that a day off doesn't feel like a day off. A day off feels like not just that you are losing money, sorry, like not making money, but you're actively losing money. And it's a real sort of like, it stops you being able to chill quite significantly. Not just the fact that you're not making anything, but you're losing it. You're losing the opportunity. And yeah, it's not good, is it?
No, and the end is in sight with our house. So we've had the decorators in from top to bottom. The doors were being put on. We need to sort out some carpets and a few other bits and bobs. Don't get us wrong, it doesn't look the finished article, but I can see the finished article in it, and it's days away from being finished rather than weeks or months. So that's a massive thing. Oh, if anyone's watching this, do us a favor. And I promised myself I would never do this, but I think it's only fair. I was looking the other day, so like 98.7% of the people who consume our content don't like or follow the page. So if you are watching this and you haven't, give it a click, because it really does help us with the metrics, understand who's watching and what they want, and how to give you better content. It's not for us, it's for you. So if you could, and you're watching it or listening, give it a click.
And with that, just a quick shout out to the 3 folks who have already come and said hello today. So Stephen, well done, first in the doors. John, evening to you too. And Wayne, we see you popping up all the time there. Martin, you follow, of course you follow, you're a good soldier, well done, man. So thank you very much. So with that, how did you find last week? I mean, that was absolutely incredible, wasn't it, Mr. Minkman? I came into that with not knowing what to expect, because as you guys all probably know, I'm very much more the chemical man. I'm chemicals. I do that. I've been working in the chemical side of our industry for so long. So to talk to someone about training attack minks blew my mind. I mean, what the hell was that all about?
He was class, wasn't he? He was absolutely grade A class. And if anyone hasn't watched Joseph Carter Minkman, I think the podcast give a whole if you do consume his content and you watch this back, everyone said that they could see Alex was like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, it was brilliant. If you want to see Alex look perplexed, go watch the podcast. But I think it gave a whole I follow his content, and what it did was it gave a whole different dimension to Joseph, because he's always very well presented and and it just showed you how I'm sure he doesn't mind us saying erratic his brain is, and I can say that kindly because my brain's on exactly the same wavelength. It was fantastic. I loved it.
I don't think you're alone in that. I think a lot of our industry thrives on the chaos. We go into chaotic situations. We have to solve problems that are diverse and weird and slightly strange. If you don't have a brain that can deal with absolute chaos occasionally, you're going to be in trouble. So yeah, there we go. But no, guys, go back and have a listen to Mr. Minkman. And if you want to go back even further, I think the last 2 were Jasmine from Photolec, some really good information about bulbs, which is going to be important for you guys next year. And before that, you can watch me get my ass dragged across the coals by Sean and my father. So
it was good. That was well, but yeah. But we now have another brilliant guest coming on tonight to talk to us about whatever he wants. But I want to really try and get into gym talk. Jim England's coming on now. And if anyone is interested in doing bird work at height, particularly abseiling and all that crazy shit hanging off wires, acting like a squirrel, this next hour is probably going to be right up your street. So without further ado, let's bring on Mr. England.
Good evening. Hello, chaps.
There we go.
Hi, John.
I think, first of all, Chaos would be a great name for a pest control company.
Controlled chaos, I think, would be better.
Chaos. But I think, and Sean, I can improvise. I was listening to you about the whole house thing. I moved house in August, so it's just been a building site since, and I'm sitting in the kitchen, which is a bit echoey. So apologies if it is coming across that way. But we literally got it finished yesterday. So yeah, it's been fun and games. So I've got a lot of empathy there. So
if we start to see you go a little bit moon-eyed, it's because you're still breathing in paint fumes from all around you there.
Well, we had a log burner installed. You're talking about breathing in fumes. And they did say, oh, yeah, there'll be a little bit of smoke when you first light it. We had the windows open, the doors open. It was like, I was going to call the fire brigade at one point. It was a bit mental.
Yeah, because you've got to let it all sort of like line the flues, haven't you? It's got to, first.
Yeah. He did warn us. He said it's going to be a bit smoky, but we weren't quite expecting that much smoke. But luckily we had the heads up.
No, it's all good. Anyway, Jim, welcome to the podcast. It's lovely to have you on. For those who don't know who you might be, can you give us a little bit of an introduction?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. I feel very honoured that you've had 68 guests.
Makes you number 69. I'm sure there's some accolade in that. We can get you a certificate.
Yeah, I certainly can. Yeah. So again, all the things that you were saying earlier about, well, I wasn't going to say that, but anyway, yeah. So Jim England. I got into pest control. Oh gosh, it was a bit random. I don't know if it happens like that way for a lot of people. It wasn't on my radar.
He's not on our radar now.
Oh well, I thought there was a bit of a delay in what we were saying and what he was replying to, but ladies and gentlemen, Jim has left the building.
Jim will come back on.
He'll come back on in a minute. That was an amazing cliffhanger moment, wasn't it? The reason I got into pest control wasn't what you expect. This is live on air, BuzzFeed clickbait, ladies and gentlemen. This is.
Do you know what it is, Al? I want to take a moment to say, as much as it's a little bit annoying that Jim's like being booted off, it's not the end of the world. But doesn't that bring into account I've had like 68 guests, probably 70 odd episodes, and really, in terms of how easily they've ran pretty well, haven't they?
Okay, I am going to take the rose tinted glasses off you a second, and I'm going to remind you of the days when we used to run this on Facebook.
That was shit on it. That was shit. Yeah, that was
not good. While Jim just gets his computer sorted out again, if anyone wants a real giggle, go back to some of our very, very early podcasts when we were trying to do it live on Facebook, trying to bring people in, me having power cuts in my shed and stuff like that. It was good. Billy McPherson still wearing a t-shirt. Yes, absolutely. Guys,
I've got
anyone who's been on the podcast.
There's an issue. Do not blame us, Billy. Stuart said to me, I'm sending Stuart some products that we want him to test for us because he's very good at that, and his t-shirt, to which I said, what size are you? And he said, I'm an extra large. I said, what size is Billy? He said, I haven't got a clue. I said, you speak to him regular, can you work it out, and we will send you both a t-shirt in the same package? To which he said yes. So if Stuart's watching this, Stuart is to blame, not I. I don't know if that's true. I might have just made that up.
You're going to throw Stuart under the bus. We won't get another American guest on ever. I mean, okay. But for anyone else who is wanting a t-shirt, we're probably in the new year going to put a little link up on our Instagram and Facebook pages where if you want a t-shirt, you can simply buy a t-shirt. If you want a t-shirt for free, come onto the podcast, and everyone who's been on the podcast will get themselves a free t-shirt. And all the money that we make from you guys buying t-shirts, if you do want one, goes back into a charitable foundation or a industry-led project that we'll all agree on towards the end of the year. So none of it, it keeps the podcast going, and then the surplus will simply just get everyone else.
And because we are ADI, we have unisex t-shirts from a small up to a treble XL. if you want to believe that, you can, but it's not true. I just decided to pick the male t-shirts from small up to treble XL because when I got to choosing the women's sizes of like the 6 to an 8 and all that, I didn't have a clue. I just worked out that that would fit everyone. So, you know, that's the way it goes. So
If it fits me and my chest, then we'll be fine.
yeah.
Right, Jim's back on again now.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Here we go. I just went to get his dog.
Oh, that's it. Right. Let's try again. So, welcome to the stage, ladies and gentlemen, Jim. Hey again, Jim.
Right.
Leaving us with a cliffhanger.
Apologies. We're out in the sticks a little bit here, so it can drop on and off. Apologies if I do drop off. So
that's all right.
I'm not quite sure where you got to, but I left school 15, went into stone cleaning business for my father. Did that for about 5 years, and then there was a global recession and people weren't spending money getting their buildings cleaned. So I joined the London Fire Brigade, and I thought it would be all excitement and adventure. And the reality was, it was for me a bit like going back to school. It was a lot of sitting around, and I must admit, I just don't get on really well with being told what to do. So my brother, in the meantime, had become a London taxi driver. So I followed in his footsteps, and I did what we called a knowledge, where you ride around on a little scooter for a couple of years, learning all the streets of London, with the view to always having it not as my main sort of job, but more as something to dip in and out of, to try other things. And my dad, quite late in life, got involved in pest control. But when I was growing up, it was a bit like having Ray Mears and Bear Grylls as a dad, because like my dad would take us out, we had ferrets, we'd go out shooting and would kind of like, you know, sort of catch rabbits or whatever, and even squirrels, and, you know, we'd cook them and eat them, you know. And then my dad got involved in pest control, and he said to me, if I had my time all over again, he said, I'd have got into it much sooner. He said, I wouldn't have done the stone cleaning. You know, he said, everyone's pleased to see you. There's always going to be pests. No matter how good we are at our job, there's still going to be rats and mice and cockroaches. So that got me thinking. So I went out with my dad and took time out from driving a cab, because as a London cabbie, you're completely self-employed. You're your own little business, if you like. And I started going out with my dad, getting some on-the-job training.
Yeah.
And I loved it from the first day. I thought, this is brilliant. It was a bit like hunting in a way, you know. He was pointing out all the little telltale signs, you know. This is, you know, smearing, and this is, you know, this is the difference between bat poo and mouse poo. You know, if you rub it in your fingers, if it's bat poo, it turns to powder, and if it's mouse poo, then you're going to be left rubbing a poo. Little things like that. But I saw quite early on, obviously, that there was a lot to it, in terms of, you know, you're going into people's homes, people's businesses. So there's obviously a lot of responsibility comes with that, especially if they've got pets and children. So I got in touch with the BPCA. And I don't know if either of these two fellas have been guests of yours, but Adrian Mayer, he was one of, and Clive Bowes.
Right.
And they were both just the best. They were the best teachers, if you like. They were so passionate about the subject. I mean, Adrian Mayer would get all excited about, you know, mouse urination pillars, where, you know, he was really passionate about pest control, which I think a lot of us in the industry are. And I did some training with them and got me BPCA level 1 certificate. That enabled me to sort of get started. So I just started up the business without any real background other than the bit of on-the-job training that I'd had going out with my father, as well as what I'd learned through the training. And I was still a cab driver at the time, so this was pre-Google. This was before the internet kicked off. And the way that advertising was done back then was mostly yellow pages. I don't know if you remember that, Sean.
Yeah. My dad used to advertise in it. It was weird, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, mate, I mean, London was so expensive because it was so fragmented. What they did was they took London. If you imagine London as a circle, if you take the M25, and they basically sliced it into so many small little portions. And a friend of mine, he was a roofer, who still is, and he said to me, "Look, if you want the phone to ring, you've got to take a bit of a gamble, really. You've got to spend some money."
Yeah.
And so I signed up for about 25 grand worth of advertising. It was a massive risk.
Yeah.
And I just had to hope that the phone would ring. And off the back of those adverts, the phone was ringing, which was great. And I'd get a phone call. And what you were saying earlier about, you've got all these different sort of, for those who remember Wurzel Gummidge, he had all these different heads, 1 minute you're taking the calls, then you're, booking the jobs in, then you, like you say, you're ordering the materials to do the jobs, and then you're doing the jobs, and then you're invoicing the jobs, and then you're chasing those that haven't paid. Not a lot changes, but I basically did that for the first couple of years, and it was great. I loved it. And then my dad came to work with me, and then my brother and my nephews, and other staff that I've had for a long time now. Some of them from the very beginning. Who've been brilliant and are still with us to this day. And then at the start of what you were saying, about the working at height and bird control, I remember it was many years back. We had an inquiry about doing some bird netting. No pun intended, but I sort of winged it a little bit. I thought, yeah, it can't be that difficult, and I realised there's quite a lot to it. And I started doing bird work and bird netting.
Jim, before we go fully into your sort of like bird netting and your abseiling and the other bits and bobs, just want to cycle back to, we've spoken a lot on this podcast over the years, and a lot of people have come on have said, hey, get yourself a mentor. Like everyone from Lucy from fumigation all the way through to, I'm trying to think of some of the others on this one. But you mentioned two big names there, and many people may not have heard of Clive and Adrian. Yeah, no, I know Adrian. I don't know why I forgot his name. But I mean, Adrian also runs the London liaison group, doesn't he? Pest Control Liaison.
Do you know what? I've not had much. Yeah, since my training with Adrian, I've not had much contact with him, but he was brilliant. Oh. He was absolutely brilliant.
The thing is ladies and gentlemen listening to us, guys, gals, and gulls, I cannot sort of like stress enough the importance of having, a little bit of humility, swallowing a bit of pride, and finding yourself a mentor.
100%. I think I've always said it to myself and to anyone who works for me. We can't know everything, and if you go to a situation, you go to a job, and the client, the first time I remember it happened to me, the client said, "We've got German cockroaches." It was on a job in Islington, and I turned up there and I went down into this basement, and there was these brown insects, and they weren't cockroaches, and at the time I didn't know what they were. And I've always been a firm believer in, you've got to ask. You can't try and sort of like bluff in this industry. It's too important. You can't bluff anything. So I would go on forums through organisations like the BPCA and MPTA and other people that I'd got to know through my training, and people like Adrian and Clive. Turned out it was a wolf borer, but I didn't know what it was at the time. But yeah, I would say to anyone who's either new to the industry or even old to the industry, don't be afraid to say, I don't know what it is. I'll be the first one to put my hands up and say, I haven't got a clue, but I'll find out.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the flip side of that, if you've got a lot of knowledge in something, if you've spent 30 years specializing on something and you are confident that you're doing it, even if it's, doing the business side of things, look to sort of like bolstering our younger generation coming in, the new people coming in. Probably one of the things that drops people faster in this industry than anything else is people's confidence.
Yeah.
If people don't have confidence in what they're doing, and sometimes having that extra person there, having that Clive or that Adrian, or in
Yeah.
my case it was my father, or a gentleman called Steve Havers, who was very instrumental in helping sort of like my mentorship going forwards, then yeah, find them and bring someone in. Yeah, bullshit back and friends. Yeah,
I don't know if you knew him or not. The first person who ever helped me out, who was the person I would ring up and ask, "What's this? What's going on?" was Peter Fielding.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Know him, Alex?
Name's
He used to
familiar.
be in the
I'm sure.
Arcade Gym.
Lovely guy. Yeah. 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 One of the first people who I got in touch with was Tim Sheehan at Safeguard. I saw he had a really good business going, and I contacted him because his wife used to be a consultant, I think through the BPCA or someone. And I phoned him up and just said, look, I'm quite new to the industry and I'm looking for some tips. And he said, yeah, come down. And I tell you what, he was a gentleman, and he still is. He's a lovely fella. And he really helped me out at the beginning. Because like I said, I didn't have the luxury of coming from the industry. I didn't work for one of the big companies or a small company for that matter. I just went straight into it, very much sort of from zero to into the thick of it. And there was many times I had to get advice and contact people, but the forums, were quite helpful for that. And I suppose nowadays you've got things like Facebook and.
As I say, the forums can be a blessing and a curse sometimes. Let's be fair. Sometimes you find some absolute gems on these forums. Other times, don't believe everything you read.
No,
definitely.
And I did encounter some negativity. I must admit, that you'd go on some forums and you'd ask something or other, and people would be very dismissive. You just have to roll with it, don't you?
Shall I let you into a secret about a past guest?
Go on.
So there's a lady called Layla Bennett come on, and I know she's probably going to shout at us for this, but I don't care.
Go on.
She's a falconer, and one of my lads is wanting to get into it and that. And I said, why are falconers such a bunch of arseholes on Facebook? Like, of all of the people I've met, I've never met anyone as bad as that. And she went, I find them really nice and da da da. And I was like, oh, do you? And I was thinking, really? And afterwards she went, I didn't think I could say anything bad, but you're absolutely right. They're horrendous on them forums, aren't they? I was like, yeah, they are, yeah.
Yeah, I can believe it. But no, I've met a few falconers. I can't say I've formed an opinion one way or the other, to be honest. They've all been pleasant, the ones I've met. It's not something we really get involved with. But yeah, I can imagine. But yeah, like I say, don't be afraid to ask. Oh, have we lost you again? I don't know, hope not.
No, we've got you.
No,
we've got you.
Still here. Just contemplating life in general.
We've had lots of people come on and talk falconry, but we haven't actually had anyone come on and talk nets and working at height and all that. And I've got a customer whose son is going through his abseiling and all that, not to do pest control, but just to work on buildings and stuff. So
yeah.
I know you want to talk about that, and I'm super keen to hear about it. I know Al is as well. So go on, tell how you got that, because that's different.
So basically, what happened with me was you tend to find like your friend's son who's doing his rope access. So there's an organisation called IRATA, the International Rope Access Trade Association, and they basically are the, if you like, the governing body for rope access on a global scale. And it was started off by a group of climbing lads who thought, hold on, we could turn this into a commercial enterprise. We could sort of, like you say, rather than putting up a £20,000 scaffolding where we've got to get permits and licenses and everything else, we could do that off of ropes. And so it really did, it was born out of the climbing industry, a lot of it. So to get your rope access ticket, you do it's a 1 week course to get started. And at the end of that 1 week course, you go through various scenarios, like various quite basic stuff, basic rigging, basic rescues, the fundamentals, the principles, how to go up a rope, how to come down a rope. how to go from one rope to another rope, and so on. We used to take on bird jobs that involved rope access. And what we found was the guys and girls that were working in the industry were generalists. One minute they were cleaning windows, then they were doing concrete repairs or some form of inspection. And we'd give them a hog ringer and a crimper and a barrel strainer, and they would kind of look at it a bit, what do I do with this? And it was quite evident that they weren't really competent enough they were great on ropes. They'd get you up the north face of the Eiger, but they were no good at putting up bird netting. So I thought, well, if you can't beat them, join them. So I this was about 14, 15 years ago, I first qualified. There's 3 levels. I've only stayed as a level 1 because when we work in rope access, we have to always work in pairs. And if you're going to work to the code of practice, one of the people has to be a level 3. So we bring in some level 3 guys to assist. One of the lads who's worked for me for about 17 years now, about 6-7 years ago, we got him onto the ropes. He's now a level 2, and it won't be long before he's at level 3. I didn't bother going up through the levels because it's not my daily grind, you know. But basically, what we do now as a company is we don't sub out the rope element. We might bring in people to supervise on the rope side of things, but they're not there to do the bird netting. That's down to us. Yeah, I love it. You know, I mean, we work out of all sorts, you know, mutes. Was in a mute last year, 90 metre, big old boy, you know. And you're up there in the old basket. It's you know, it's not for the faint-hearted. But what we've ended up doing is we've ended up forging a really good relationship with lots of pest control companies out there that want to offer bird control, especially the working at height. And basically, we go in under their banner. So if you had a job, Sean, and you said, look, I've got this job, I want you to net the underside of this railway bridge or whatever it happens to be, you know, we would basically come and survey it and put together effectively a plan of action. We would work out the materials, the risk assessments, and we go unbranded, so we don't wear anything with Protex on it. And what it does is it does 2 things. One, you know, keeps your client happy. And very often when we're on jobs doing bird work, because they know we're a pest control company, I mean, we're a BPCA, CEPA, you know, we've got all the accreditation. If it's one of our own jobs and we're working there, sometimes we get approached to do the pest control as well. Obviously, you don't really want to be losing your bread and butter customers. So when we go there, as far as they're concerned, we're part of your organisation. So, you know, it's not like you've got, you know, yourself, people very often tap for business. They try and sort of point out, oh, look at this bait station. It's a bit sort of, you know, it doesn't look like it's being checked. It's, you know, they're basically trying to win new business by trying to put your business down, you know?
Yeah.
So
for anyone watching this, that is the cheapest and worst way to get business.
Totally.
Because if you do get business, what it means is you've got a customer that will fall for that shit the next time someone else does it.
Exactly. I mean, bait stations can get, you know, they can get, you know, cobwebbed up and, you know, a few bit of leaf litter, and then people try and put that down as a sign of.
I actually did a bit of an experiment down on the farm. I set up a whole load of boxes on the site. No other reason than I just put them on the wall, and I saw how quickly it would take for the insides of those boxes to get a bit grubby. Now, by no way is this sort of like a vindication to not check your boxes.
No.
But some of these boxes in exposed locations where I had a bit of a wind coming through and leaves, they could have leaves and they could have dust and bits of grot.
Just detritus.
Yeah, in about a week. About a week. Now, of course, when you go into a box and it's literally, you know, mud, everything's gone mouldy and a bit rotten. That's a problem. But
That's a
some
different
leaves
story.
in there, and yeah, absolutely, a bit of dust on there. The other one that gets me is labels. On some of these boxes, I trialed out a lot of the labels. I put
Yeah.
a label on one day, had a heavy dose of rain followed by a cold snap, and then all the labels lifted up when the water basically the water got underneath the edges, froze, and
Build it
peeled the
up.
labels off. Yep, and
Yeah.
that took only a couple of days.
And like you say, it's a
So
real cheap shot. You know, I mean, if that's how you want to win new business, then that's down to you. You know, but
oh yeah,
I
You know,
mean, go
sorry,
on, Sean.
we do one with a local council up here that tend to use us for their drain surveys, and we've never ever stood on their toes ever. Like if anyone gets us in, we don't stand on their toes. They're now contacting us saying, "Listen, we've got this potentially big job. Like there's every chance that we could partner up on this."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you
And that's what it's all
and
about, isn't it? I mean, that's what it's
yeah,
all about. It's not about all trying to go out there and trying to be the biggest and the best. It's about, very often, like I say, we've worked in collaboration with so many pest control companies now, and I love it. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like holier than thou or anything, but like the other thing that's come around quite a few times is we'll be working on building A, and someone from building B will come out and say, "Oh, we could do a bit of that. We've got pigeons on the back of our building as well. We would like that." So what we do, we take their details, and I'd phone you up and say, "Sean, look, we're on building A for you. Well, the guy whoever from building B has come out." Because the way I see it, two things. One, we would never have generated that lead were it not for the fact that we were doing that job for you. And secondly, if the week later you come round to check your building and see how it's going, and we're suddenly working on the one next door, you kind of think, that's a bit of a coincidence, isn't it? So
I think the other problem you've got with that is if the two building owners talk and
yeah,
they get two similar jobs, but they're priced up differently, and it's like, the same guy did mine, but he's done it for less or more or whatever it is, however it's working out. You can shoot both pest control companies in the foot massively, can't you?
I mean, what we tend to do in that regard is when we look at a job and we're doing it for a third party, we have to cut our cloth accordingly. So the way I see it is by having all these people out there, all these different pest control companies, it's like having a sales team out there, So we're getting leads. I mean, you don't never want to be a busy fool. You don't want to just be out there turning over loads and loads of work, but not making any money. Let's be honest, we're all out there to try and earn a crust.
Yeah.
But basically, when we look at a job, if you've got no knowledge in bird control, I mean, I've got very little knowledge when it comes to drainage. So if someone said to me, "Oh, I need to get my drains jetted and cambered and I need to get them lined," I wouldn't have a clue. I'd say, "Okay, I'll get Sean in and he'll tell you what's going to happen." And basically, what we do when we look at bird jobs for another company, I always say, "Look, Sean, if I was doing that job, we'd do it for, £5,000. I'll do it for you for 4. If you charge the client 5.5, you're not taking liberties. And basically, it's got to be worth your while. We tick over, we make a little bit of money off the back of it. Obviously, it's not quite the same as when we're doing it for ourselves. There's that little bit more profit margin when we're doing it for ourselves. But it tends to work, and I've always said to people, the key to it is just don't be greedy, We have worked for some companies, very, 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 very big companies.
Please recharge.
I know what you were going to say, and the
And
treble your price.
you can actually say probably 400-500% in some instances. I remember doing a job one time, and we charged £12,000. It was a big roof net. It was a few years ago, and I walked around at the end to get the job signed off.
Ta-da!
and the second one.
So, Al, I was going to say I wanted us both to address this question because Jim brought it up there. Why in this industry? Why it's not even this industry in life? Why is profit a dirty word?
Because there's a difference, I think, between making a profit and making a profit at the expense of someone else. I think people see it. So let me give you a little bit of pop psychology, a bit of weird psychology for you, right? If I was to ask you, if
Please recharge.
hang on, let me just turn that off because that's going to be going on all night. If you were to go to a corner shop, you know, the little shop round the road, run by a family business, run by the guy that you have known since you're 8, that's given you cans of soda and, you know, football cards and the rest of it, and you give him a tenner, and he gives you more change than you were anticipating, would you tell him, hang on, you've overcharged me, like you've given me more change, you give me a couple of quid more? Would you tell him?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah,
Absolutely. You go into Tesco's, right? You walk into Tesco's and they basically, you ask for £50 cash back and they give you £60 cash back. Do you tell them?
I want to say, truthfully, I want to say no, I wouldn't, but I know I fucking would, because I'd panic over the woman behind the counter. But I know what you're saying. Like, is it more manageable morally when it's a large firm? Yes, absolutely, 1000%.
And because what we do in our industry is there's that very clear-cut distinction, isn't there, between the residential, the emergency call-outs, the domestic works, and then our long-term contracts. We don't mind necessarily making a profit on our long-term contracts. We can understand that. We put the money in. It's easy to rationalize. You're dealing with a business. You're charging a logo. It's business to business. But when it becomes business to consumer, when you can put a face to that, when you've got little Mrs. Mabel down the road who's like, would you like a cup of tea? I'll have to turn the gas off for the electricity. And you're sat there thinking, I'm going to have to charge them £300 for this mouse job. It becomes a very difficult thing to rationalize then, because you are making that emotional connection rather than that business connection. And it's why it's difficult, again, as sole traders, to have that, you know, that almost psychotic schism between this is my business and this is my you know, feelings, and the two should separate. So I don't believe profit's a dirty word, but I think context is by far and away.
Why do pest control? Jim's coming back on. Jim, why is profit a dirty word?
I'm really sorry about this bloody
No, honestly, don't even worry about it. Why is profit a dirty word?
Why is profit a dirty word? Well, I mean, I don't think it's a dirty word. I mean, you know, like you say, I could hear, even though I was in the background, I could hear what you were saying about, you know, Mrs. Miggins with her, you know, sort of having to put the gas off to boil the kettle and that. And I'm sure we've all been in situations where I just believe in a lot of it is karma and just, you know, I mean, I've always said, and again, this isn't trying to sound sort of like, you know, Mother Teresa or anything, but I just think, I always look at people and I see, like, my parents, if I'm at an old person's house and I'm doing a job for them, I'm not joking you, the amount of times we've walked away with just, you know, honestly, I remember we did a squirrel job years ago for this old boy, he was a lovely old fella. He was in his 90s, there was him and his wife, and he was called Harry, and he was a real old East Ender, and his wife was called Mavis. And you'd go around there and he'd say, cup of tea, boy? And you'd say, yes, please, Harry. Mavis, put the kettle on, and a bit of cake, son. And yeah, all right, Harry, yeah. And he'd be right, Mavis, give the boy a bit of cake. And it was a lovely old fella. And I remember we went back there and we caught quite a few squirrels. And then at the end of the job, he said, right, son, what do I owe you? Because we'd never actually got around to discussing costs. It was just like he phoned us up and we went and done it. And in the end, I'll be honest with you, I said, do you know what? I said, he was an old, like, he used to work on the docks in the East End of London, you know, which was hard graft back in them days. I mean, them blokes were literally fighting for their jobs, you know, and I remember, like, we didn't charge him. It was just like, I just couldn't bring myself to charge him. He was like my granddad. And we, you know, and he started crying. He welled up. He was like, I was like, I'll leave it out, you know. Every now and again, you know, them situations arise and you know, you act accordingly, you know. But
and yeah, I was about to say, we were halfway through a story before you twice in a row now have literally given us a cliffhanger. This is what I did. Smoke bomb.
Right. Where were we at?
So the question is, Jim, you were saying you were getting the 12k job signed off.
Oh yeah, we got the 12k job signed off, and And she said, like, you know, lovely job, but she said, it's expensive, isn't it, this bird control? And I acted a little bit innocent. I said, well, I don't really know. I said, I'm just an installer, you know. They've been charged 60,000. I was like, right, okay. You know,
right,
yes, just.
I'm going to say something controversial here. I'm going to say something controversial, which is, did the company charging 60,000 charge too much, or did you, at your 12K, charge far too little? Oh God!
He'll come back
He's
on.
gone again. It's okay. He'll be back on in a second. There we go. This is a question. Yeah. That's a question for everyone listening at the moment, because there's a fair few of, I can see on the counter at the top, there's a fair few of you on our different channels listening. In that situation where Jim's just sort of like outlined, he went in, he did a job, he installed, and came to a price of 12K, and the previous company had done the same work for 60K. Who is right and who's wrong in that situation? Actually, no, that's the wrong way of putting it. No one's right and no one's wrong. But with that, and bringing Jim back on, did he charge too little, or did the other company charge far too much? So, Jim, back to you.
I think it was a bit of both. Apologies for this connection bloody dropping out. But yeah, it could have been a bit of both. I think, you know, we might have been too lean on that situation. But like I say, I think every job you do, you've got to look at, obviously, you know, it's down to cost, labour, materials, and all the other bits that go with that. And
I'm going to give you something different.
Go on.
Because I see this fucking massively different to everyone else. And I say this to my lads. What were they paying you to do?
We were basically netting off a large roof area. So it was a case of putting stanchions around the perimeter. And then
this was a lesson that was given to me by a business guru, sorted it out. He said and I know the conversation he would have with you. He'd say, what they're paying you to do? And you go, net a roof, and he goes, no, absolutely not. They're paying you to stop the bird shit sitting in the air conditioner making people poorly. They're paying you to stop them getting sued. They're paying you to stop people slips, trips, and fall, and them getting sued.
And then that's a great way of putting it, Sean. No, that's a fantastic way of putting it. And you know, like you say, an example of that, we had a job on a hotel up in London a few years ago, and we brought to their attention that they had an area that was desperately in need of proofing, and it was all their air handling units. And we brought it to their notice, and they were like, oh, no. And that was in like the February, March, and it was like middle of June, July, and it was a scorching hot week. We were going through a real hot spell, and you know, temperatures up in the 30s, and their aircon played up, and they got an engineer out, and he just took one look. And I mean, this was a particularly heavy infestation, and he just said, no chance. He said, I'm out of here. He said, until you get this sorted, I can't work in those conditions. They had to, I think, cancel or basically refund about 40 rooms because they just couldn't keep them cool. It was in the King's Cross area. It was just round by King's Cross. And the money that they must have refunded would have far outweighed what we were charging to do the net. So yeah, exactly what you just said.
Yeah, it's the other thing. Don't just think about what they're paying for you on site. Yours says to me, they're also paying to make sure you don't drop something on a customer's head.
Yeah.
You know, that you don't upset them, that they don't have to. And he used to say to us, stop valuing your business of cost and start valuing it of value. What do you do? What do you do well? And then 100%. Ask yourself, what's it worth now? And I was like, got you.
It's like if you went to get your knee operated on tomorrow morning by a top eminent knee surgeon, and it's going to take him an hour to go in and scrape out the cartilage and bit of keyhole. And you know, he's going to charge you, if you've gone private, because you can't wait for the NHS to sort it out, you know, you might pay 15,000 quid, and people are saying, you're paying 15 grand for an hour's work, but you're not. You're paying 15 grand for like years and years of knowledge and experience. I'm not comparing what we do with surgery, but there is an element of anything you do that you're good at People are not paying for
People-
that one little moment in time. They're paying for years
People
and
don't
years.
pay for, yeah. People, it's very hard to put a cost on your skill. And so this is what goes back to before. If you don't have the confidence in what you're doing, you don't make that markup on your skill, time, and expertise, because you always will undervalue your expertise. So those of you who know, I'm at heart very much a Stoic. And Marcus Aurelius was one of the most, famous Stoics out there, as was Seneca. And they said, we worry so much about what other people think and care so little about what we think of ourselves. And it's classic. You will worry that people will think that you are bad at your job, despite the fact that you will then, knowing that you are good, you will diminish that thought. You'll say, no, I can't be that good because that random stranger said I was bad. That person who knows nothing about my industry, that person who knows nothing about how to do pest management says that I am terrible, and their opinion must be right, despite the fact that you have very clear evidence to the contrary.
I think in this industry, it's very. I think this is very much an industry where it can often be a race to the bottom. People wanting to undercut, and not, like you say. I mean, I think in this industry, I've seen it over the years. People undervaluing, like you say, their skills and their knowledge and their experience, because they're worried that, like you say, they're worried about what the customer's going to think about. Oh, they're charging a little bit more. But if you're good at what you do, then you charge accordingly, I guess.
So anyone who's a little bit confused as to how best to do this, I did write a little article for Pest Mag a little while back, and it breaks it down. So basically, because there are some elements in this, as we all said before, we're predominantly technicians doing the role of a business person's job, and it can get a bit confusing. But have a look at that. Go back, find the old Pest Mag articles. It breaks it down into what you should set your BATNA, what your best alternative to actually getting the job is, which is sometimes walking away. You can make more money by not doing the job than actually by doing a bad job, which will cost you money, ironically. So yeah, go and have a look at that magazine if you are concerned as to, just don't know what to do, but don't undervalue yourselves. Now back to netting while we've still got time. Jim,
go on.
Tell us more about this job. Tell us more about your rope access, because I think that's something that's very interesting.
So basically, I mean, the netting side of it, I love. It's I mean, every job is obviously different. It's not like, if you're going to do a wasp nest or, let's be honest, most sort of, mouse infestations, they've all got their own little challenges. But the bird work, it's taken a long time to get to the level that we're at, and you have to kind of look at it. I mean, you have to also, very often people say, you've got a client and you say, we're going to put netting. They go, oh, no, I don't want netting. The birds get caught up and they die and all of this business. Well, they do if they're not maintained, that's for sure. If the net becomes loose or someone's coming along and damaged it, then that will definitely be a factor. But I do enjoy the challenge of it. You have to look at it almost like sort of like 3D. You have to sort of see it in your head how you think it's going to sit and where it's going to go. And there's a lot of thought goes into it, and that's the bit of it that I really enjoy. And when it's installed properly, I mean, I've seen jobs that other companies have done that have been absolutely brilliant. I've gone out there, and I'll be the first one, again, going back to what we were saying about people trying to win business by putting down their competitors. I've been to jobs where the customer isn't quite happy with the end product, and I've gone and looked at it and said, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't have done it any different. I mean, what they've done is a good job, it's not always going to, listen, it's never going to enhance a building's looks. It's always going to be a trade-off. You either put up with the noise, the smell, the risks associated with the bird drop-ins and the insect activity and all the rest of it, like you say, the slip hazards, or you put up some form of physical barrier. And in this case, it's mostly netting. I mean, we do other systems like the electric track systems, no particular brands mentioned, and others, yeah. So there's other ones out there. So, but yeah. And that's been quite fun. I think anyone who's ever installed it, we've all been shocked by it. And it gives you a good old belt. I mean, you see why the pigeons don't hang around. I mean, it's up to about 6,000 volts, so it gives you a good old twang.
6,000 volts.
6,000, yeah.
Oh, of course, because I imagine it's a step-down transformer, isn't it? So that's probably like an eighth of an amp.
Yeah. There's no ampage in it, but the voltage is. The best way I can describe it is imagine if you've got a really thick rubber band, an elastic band, and sort of held it, really give it a good stretch, and then, or when someone flicks you with a tea towel, you know, it's a bit like that. It's like, whoa, sugar. It's painful, yeah. So we've done quite a lot of that over the years, and bird point and other stuff. But yeah, the netting is where I enjoy it, you know. So and you know, I mean, we've done little small nets on just a private balcony, which might be 2 meters by 1 meter. We've done nets that are over 30,000 square feet, you know, where, you know, you're netting off huge areas, and then obviously that's got challenges that come with it, you know. Peregrine falcons, we've worked around sites where they've got peregrines and you have to use a different net in there altogether. The twine.
Why is that?
Well, 2 reasons. One, they need to be able to, it needs to be a bit more visible so the birds can hopefully see it in time. But the peregrine, if we're doing netting on buildings where there's peregrine falcons, the actual thickness of the twine, if you imagine the actual individual square of a net, the twine that makes up that square, you know, in standard netting is probably point something a millimetre or whatever. But in when you're doing it for sites where you've got peregrines, it has to be a minimum of 4 to 5 mil in thickness. And if the weight of it is immense, I mean, it just weighs, obviously, because it's so much thicker. So you have to boost and bolster everything up. You know, you have to use stronger fixings. You have to use thicker wire, bigger barrel strainers.
Are you double hog ringing each square on that then?
Yeah. We did some prison netting. That came with a few funny moments. You know, we did some of the prisons to stop drones getting in, not birds, but drones. And yeah, that was quite an eye opener. Some of the banter we was having with the inmates was quite funny. You know, like you'd be working outside their cell, and one of them would say, "Excuse me, mate, can I borrow those scissors?" You'd be like, "No, mate." I mean, we were on one job, and this lad, he said, "I said, how long you got then to do?" He said, "I got like, it was about 8 years, you know." I said, "Blimey, what'd you do for that then?" He said, "Well, he said, I only nicked a couple of watches, a couple of Rolexes, you know." And I said, "All right." I said, were they being worn at the time?" He went, "Yeah, therein lies the problem, yeah." So, you know, yeah, that was, you know, that was quite funny. Well, it wasn't funny for the victims, obviously, but it was just, you know, I mean, we was working on one job on a prison. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning, and we're drilling outside, and this fella came to the window and he said, "Hey mate, can you keep the noise down? I'm trying to sleep in here." I'm like, "Mate, I'm up at 5:30 in the morning, you know." And this fella was trying to get some shut eye at like middle of the day.
You should have just turned around and be like, "What? You got things to do tonight? You got a busy evening?"
We were probably interrupting his PlayStation or something. I don't know, or you know. But no, the prisons was quite interesting. We did a few prisons, and that was, yeah, that did have its moments. I remember one of our lads. He was driving a mute back to the compound, and one of the inmates launched an apple from about the 5th story up, and it hit him on the head whilst he was driving them. It was a self-propelled boom, and it literally hit him on the head. He was wearing a helmet, but the whole prison just erupted. I mean, it was like a direct hit, because obviously we were the enemy, and I just cracked up laughing. I found it was quite funny, you know. But we was outside one area where they had a real altercation going on in the cell. You could hear these 2 fellas really, it sounded like they were going to kill each other. And I said to the prison warden, like, you know, "Do you not think you should get in there and sort them out?" And he went, "That's one bloke, mate." He went, "He's in there on his own." It was a bit like Robert De Niro, like, you talking to me? You know, it was just, yeah, bit mad at times.
And this brings me to an interesting point, which is obviously there are some buildings, let's say like a prison, where putting static scaffolding up on the side probably, and I'm going to be honest with you, is not a good idea.
No, that wouldn't work. No.
Just putting a rope ladder down. So actually, this using ropes, nukes, it affords a lot of flexibility, doesn't it? So I mean,
It certainly does.
But
yeah.
flip side of that, there's obviously going to be occasions where rope access is a big no-no. So
yeah, I mean, it's got its limitations. I mean, you can't hang in
Hmm.
thin air. You know, I mean, there are jobs where, you know, I looked at a job only this week. It was on a hospital up in London, and it was a big overhang, and they wanted to get to some pipes beneath the overhang, and there was just no way you could physically have come over that edge and then got back in to the building. And I said to the fella, you know, look, you're going to have to scaffold it. And you couldn't get a mupe in there. It was round the back in a tiny little kind of area. So there are limits to what you can do.
Try just hear me out for a second. So I used to do a lot of rock climbing, and oh, he's back again. That was quick.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
there he is. Yeah.
Back again. All right. So I used to do a lot of rock climbing. As you know, people look at me. I do a lot of powerlifting now. I'm not really built for rock climbing anymore. I tend to pull things down as opposed to lift things up. But with that, I used to do a lot of like lead climbing and the rest of it. And what I think people don't understand is those ropes that we use for climbing the rest of it, they are actually pretty stretchy. And I'm not talking elastic band stretchy, but they're called dynamic impact ropes. They're meant to have a little bit of bounce to them.
Yeah, we don't use dynamic ropes.
I was about to say, because with rock climbing, one of the most dangerous falls that you can have, ironically, is the fall closest to the floor.
Yeah, because of the fall. Obviously, the stretch, you know. So yeah, I mean, we don't use dynamic ropes. The main reason being is in rope access, you spend a hell of a lot of time, as well as descending, you spend a hell of a lot of time ascending. And if you had all that stretch in a 100-meter of rope, you'd be like, you'd never get off the ground. You know, you'd be like a bloody, you know, bell ringer.
Yeah, and I have to say, I have ascended on ropes before using like gree-grees and the rest of it.
You'd have used like a Jumar or something, you know, like we call it like a hand jammer.
Yeah, so there's a couple. Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to give with the question then, isn't it? How many close calls you had and what was your worst?
Well, thankfully, in work mode, like you say, none, because it's so well regulated. You just don't put yourself in a situation where you're gonna be in a situation where that arises. They do happen. You know, I was on a job a couple of years ago, and we were there to look at the job overall. There was myself looking at the bird control. There was a scaffolder. There was a window fitter, a roofer, painter, decorator. It was about 4 years ago. In fact, we were in Marylebone in London, and not the station, but in the area. And we were up on the roof. It was the first day back. It was about the 6th of Jan, and I'd seen what I needed to see, and I left. Before we got into the job, we were waiting for the client to arrive to give us access. There's about 6 of us stood around chatting, and I was chatting to all of the lads. You might have gathered by now, I do like a natter. And this a week or two after the job, a week or two after the survey, I called up the client just to see how things were progressing, just to get some feedback. And he informed me that they were no longer working on that particular project. And I asked him why, and he said, do you remember the scaffolder? He said, quite a short guy, dark hair. And I said, yeah, I remember, yeah. He said, well, just after you left, he went to have a look over the side of the building, and he slipped and fell, and it was 6 floors, and the poor bloke perished. And it can happen like that. You know, I mean, my grandfather fell 6 floors. My mum's dad, he was working in a rope cradle that hadn't been rigged up properly. He survived the fall, which was a miracle, but he died a year later from complications. So, you know, you never want to put yourself in a situation where you're going to, well, effectively, you know, fall off the side of a building. So, you know, you have a working line and a backup line. they're both independently anchored. So you just don't ever want to put yourself in that situation. I mean, we did a job on a hospital again in London, and quite rightly, the client wanted to go through all of our risk assessment method statements. We have an inventory of all our kit, what we call a manifest. So every single item is listed, literally every single item is listed, and under Lola that has to be checked. And he spent about 3 hours saying, right, can you get your harness out of the bag? I want to check the serial number matches with the manifest. And we said, yeah, no problem. And we did all that. And we were up on the roof, and I was at the edge, connected, harnessed up. And my colleague was working over the side, and I was basically passing stuff down. And with that, I get a tap on the shoulder, and I look around, and it's the fella from the office who's there in his like chinos and loafers, and he's like, it's like he's looking over my shoulder, like going, "How you getting on?" And I said, "What are you doing?" He went, "I'll come up to see how you're getting on." I went, "We just spent 3 hours in your office talking about health and safety, and you're up here now. You've broken every rule in the book, mate." I said, "No." I said, "You need to get away from the edge, mate." "Well, I manage this site." I said, "I don't care what you do." I said, "You're not standing here." It just beggars belief.
Yeah, it does. And it again, I mean, looking at that from the other way, all of these things that you go through, people don't understand, the guy being an absolute wally aside, the bit leading up to that, the 3 hours of check the rest of it. Most people don't understand that's the rigmarole that you have to go through. And I have this big thing at the moment, which is I want to try and help people understand what good looks like. And it reminds me that I went to go and visit some family recently, and they're having some work done on their roof. And the scaffolders have put the scaffold up over, literally bridging over. So there's a couple of tiles that need to be replaced on the roof. Scaffold's gone up, but the scaffold has gone up over their back door, which is the main ingress point to the house. So don't use the front door, it's gone up over the back door. There is no internal laddering on the scaffolding. It goes up 3 stories, an external ladder leading to that. No rails, no rest of it. It's an absolute nightmare. None of the scaffold has tickets on it. None of the there's no fall arrest bars on there. So if they knock any of the tiles off, it's going straight down over the door that they primarily use to come in and out of the house. Yeah. It's an absolute shit show. Yeah. And I turned around to my family and said, "For the love of God, use the front door and never use it." Yeah. How did you find these people? And they said, "I have no idea. They were subcontracted out by the roofer and the rest of it. We had no control." But they had no idea. They had no concept that what these people had done was not just dangerous; it was verging on the criminal.
Yeah, I mean, why would they? I mean, if they're not in that kind of world, if they don't move in those sort of circles, as far as they're concerned, they've got their scaffolding up and everything's hunky dory.
Yeah, so this brings me, and because we have the same issue in pest control, don't we? In pest management,
absolutely.
Which is so whose job is it therefore to educate the public as to what good looks like in scaffolding, in rope access, in pest management? Whose job is it, guys? Whose job is it to let everyone know what good looks like and be honest about it?
I don't think it's anyone's job. I just think it's
it's all of our jobs.
I think you have to just basically lead by your own standards. I mean, I've always said to anyone, and the way I've got certain sort of values or whatever you want to call it that I've always worked to when I'm doing a job. I've always looked at it, and I've said this to the guys and girls who've worked for me and have worked for me. I say, look, I think if you treat every job like you're treating it as though you're doing your own, so if you're treating a mouse infestation, what would you do if you went home tonight and you had mice in your own property? Would you put down any more, any less? Would you do it any different? So treat it like it's your own or like it's a family member. I've always said treat it like it's an exam. Imagine you've got someone stood there with a clipboard and they're marking off everything that you say and do. Treat it like that. And lastly, treat it like you're on camera. Imagine, and very much in this day and age, very, very often you will be on camera without even knowing it. There'll be discrete cameras placed around properties. You know, you're treat it like you're on camera, or that program. What I think it was Matt Allwright who used to do that road trader thing or whatever it's called. You know, imagine that. I mean, I'll give you an example. I had a guy call up. This was a few years back, and he said it was about February time. He said, "I've just been up into my loft, and there's a big wasp nest up there." I said, "Mate, it'll be redundant. Just don't worry about it, you know." And he said, "Yeah, but I want it removed." And I said, "Well, go up there with a bag and remove it, you know." And he said, No. He said, I don't want to do it. And I said, "Well, there's no harm in doing it, mate. You know, you're not going to get stung. There's nothing up there." And he said, "Can you do it?" And I was in the area, and I said, "I'll pop round and I'll have a look." And I went round and I said, "Look, mate," I said, just get up there." I said, "You don't need us to do it, you know." And he said, "Yeah, but I want it removed." And I was like, "Well, look, if I do it on principle, I'm going to charge you." I said, "I don't need to charge you. You don't need to give me any money. Just do it yourself." He was able-bodied. There was nothing wrong with the fella. And basically, he was insistent that I do it. And I said, "Okay." So I said, as I'm going up the ladder, he said, "Do you not wear one of those sort of bee outfits?" I said, "Well, I would do if it was an active nest, but it's an old dead nest. It's not active." And then he said, so I got the nest and I bagged it up, and he said, are you going to spray?" And I said, "What do you mean? Are you going to spray the loft?" I said, "There's nothing to spray. I can't. It's not like I can do a preemptive spray for next season." I said, it's done." And I came back down and I held out my money and I held out my hand. I said, "Right, that's X amount." "What?" I said, "Mate, don't give me that." I said, "It's, you know, you've, you know," and I thought if I'm on camera, and I mean, I must have tried 10 times not to do the job, just trying to educate the guy. And he was like, no, I want you to do it. And I was like, "Well, you're wasting money." But I think, yeah, so in answer to your question, I think we've all got a responsibility to sort of, like you say, educate and, you know, but if some people just won't listen, no matter what you tell them, you know?
No, absolutely. There's that age-old proverb: you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it act
Gather
reasonably.
moss.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Just how we approach these interactions.
Yeah.
So, Sean, you're doing your classic furrowed brow.
Yeah.
You've got something
It's
brewing.
funny, isn't it? We're coming to talk about bird work, and in my head, I'm going over this value thing and how who's perceived as the professional. Is it up to us? And Vicky Sims put a post on the other day about pest control and bad pest control and good pest control. And I was sitting there thinking, and I'm very honest, I know that my brain works a lot different to other people. So I don't, when I say this, like people say things, I'm like, please don't do what I do. Like under any circumstances, don't. If I suggested it's a good idea, it's probably the wrong thing to do. So please don't do it. Like, I'm not saying this to make people laugh. I'm deadly serious. But I stand there and think, is it really our job? Like, people get what they pay for. Is it like, I get, don't get us wrong, I'm not saying I won't educate a customer. If a customer asks us, I will absolutely educate them through and through. But I think if there's a load of fucking drongos out there who just want something incredibly cheap, like, why am I wasting my time? Because there's nothing I can say that's going to get into them. Like, it is, whose job is it for you to get your A levels? It's your job. Whose job is it for you to be educated and being a plumber? It's your job. If you're employing someone to do a job for you, it's your job to work out that you're getting the value for the money. And if the customers took, for me, when I see all these pictures of this is fucking terrible work, this is terrible work, I think myself, if the blame was on the customers for the poor work, then the poor work would stop. That's my gut feeling. Right or wrong, I don't know, but that's how I feel about it.
Like you say about like leading the horse to water, you know, leading the horse to water and that, and
exactly. You can bring Jim to a podcast, but you can't force him to speak, can you?
You can bring Jim to a podcast, but you can't make him stay. So I don't know. I disagree a little bit with what you said there, Sean, because
Yeah.
ultimately, yeah, I do understand that everyone is accountable for their own sort of like learning. If you hire someone, it's your due diligence to do the background checks on it. However,
Yeah.
if I was to hire someone to be a plumber, I wouldn't sit there and read, what's the best plumbing guild, what's the best sort of like qualifications for a plumber. I mean, I know I should, but I don't, and no one ever does. You kind of trust that that person coming in is going to have the
Yeah, but
right,
in today's
and
day and
you
age,
trust that
you
whether,
can go,
yeah.
you can go on the website, you can look at their Google reviews, you can go on their
Mhm.
social media, you can probably in your area find people who know them, you can ask for recommendations. There's a thousand
Mhm.
things. But like for me, and the analogy I would use is this: you go into a shop to buy a mobile phone, and there's three mobile phones. There's an A1 which is worth fucking 30 quid. There's something for 500 quid, and there's something for £1,000. If you buy the one that's worth 30 quid and you get a shit phone that's broken, that doesn't get on the internet very well, it's pointless complaining that you've bought a shit phone. You knew what you were getting. If you buy the £1,300 phone and it's shit, then you have every right to complain, like every right. And I guarantee you now, if you're buying the 1,300 quid phone and it doesn't work, anybody checking those Google reviews will see that that's a shit phone that you don't want to buy. Do you know what I mean? The same thing won't be there for the shit phone. So I think myself, like, just do your homework, know what you're paying for. Don't be a tight bastard and think you can get it done cheaper somewhere else, because there's always someone willing to work cheaper. Do you know what I mean? Like, Google reviews ain't a surefire way to know if a company is any good anymore, though. Too many people get fake reviews or mates reviews. Yeah, agreed. But maybe I'm looking at it through rose tinted glasses, because I can guarantee you now all our reviews are legit. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, but
But
putting this back, you turn around and you say, how many times have you turned up to a job and whipped out your either BPCA registered or basis registered card and said, hey, I'm a member of a trade association which is fully compliant to keep up with my CPD. I am continually learning. I have this qualification. People say no because nobody gives a shit, but nobody gives a shit because we don't make a thing of it. So if we started making more of a thing of it, people might give a shit. Like, let's see your gas card. Let's see your sort of like certification. Let's see the rest of it. People
Yeah.
only know that because they made a fuss about it. We start making a fuss about it. Suddenly, members of the public are going to start challenging those people at their door. Can I see your card, please? Just to know that you're going to be putting chemicals in my house. I want to make sure that you are a legitimate pest controller. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Here we go. Here is my registered card. Done and done.
you have just made my brain tick on something, and I want to ask you two both the question. If there was a CPD scheme, and in order to get on the CPD scheme, you had to be a minimum of a level 2 RSPH, would that make you more or less inclined to use that scheme?
Go on, Lex.
I think. Oh, so you were sitting so still then. I thought you'd gone again.
I'm
Me
still here, mate.
personally. Yeah. No, so when you say level 2, unfortunately, level 2 is a bit broad. I assume you're meaning the level 2 award, which
Yeah,
is what
I
we
mean,
assume to be that. Honestly,
the one that everyone knows is a level 2, not the basic use.
yeah, okay. I actually think, and I believe some of the other CPD or one of the other trade associations does require members to be a level 2 award as a minimum. And I think that should be the minimum. I think that should be the minimum entry to long-term employment, long-term engagement with our industry. The level 2 award should be that. I believe that the level 2 safe use of rodenticides should be a stepping stone to allow trainees to be able to generate on the ground experience prior to taking their level 2, or for professionals but not trained professionals, so we're trained professionals and farmers would be professionals, the level 2 award should allow them to do pest management on their own site only. So yeah, if for me it's a no-brainer. The level 2 award is the minimum qualification for entry into our industry because it covers in very minute terms, everything that you might encounter, because we are a big industry. But that's just my thing. But I want everyone to push forward, push up, keep going.
What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I don't think it's too much to ask, is it? I mean, at the end of the day, we are dealing with, we're going into people's homes, their businesses, like I said before, if you've got children in a house and you've got pets and, you've got people out there that aren't qualified to that level and they're just going in and just randomly placing stuff and randomly using the wrong chemicals or chemicals that have gone out of date that are no longer licensed, like you say, you wouldn't get someone in to service your gas boiler unless they were gas safe. So yeah, I think every industry, whatever you're working in, it's like going back to the rope access. You wouldn't just get someone who does a bit of rock climbing as a sport on a weekend, and then the next minute they're working on the side of the shard, and they've got no concept of sort of exclusion zones or lanyards and just general principles. So yeah, I don't think that's a big ask.
You do realise that there is, so we've got there's gas safe for the gas engineers. There is a similar scheme run by the government for which recognises pest management now. It is Trade Assured or something like that. I'll find the name and I'll put it in the chat in a bit. I should know a bit more, but you can sign up to that. You can become a part of that, and some of the trade associations may have already sort of like auto-enrolled all of its members because it set the standard and the minimum.
I'll say it. The BPCA, if you join the BPCA, you'll do the trade assured. Alex won't say it, but I'll say it. Credit where it's due. If that's what they've done, then great.
Yes, absolutely. That is exactly what they've done. If you're not a member of the BPCA, it doesn't preclude you from joining. It's still the same minimum levels of requirement. It just so happens that to be a member of the BPCA also hits those minimum standards to be trade assured. So if you do want your sort of like pest control gas safe equivalent type card, there is schemes out there. So have a look at those. It's open to everyone. Go have a look. It's let's start. Everyone loves a little sort of like little card, don't they? Trustmark, thank you. So just someone pays more attention in the meetings than I do. Trustmark. That's the one you can have a look at. Thank you, Stephen. And Sean. Done. But there we go. Oh no, we're coming up to the end of the podcast now. Jim, just before we ask you anything more random, do you have any questions for us? Because this is always a good one. This is always interesting to play. Have you got any questions for us, or any questions for the listeners?
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. This whole getting involved in the podcast. It's the first time I've ever been involved in a podcast. I've not I've sort of broken my podcast cherry today. So and I do appreciate that, and I thank you for inviting me on. I didn't really think of any. Nothing really springs to mind. Other than just really hoping that everyone just continues to stay safe, and obviously the last few years has been tough, what with COVID and everything else. And, it's just, I hope everyone out there who's listening and watching, I hope they've enjoyed some of the little anecdotes or the little nuggets of information that I might have imparted for what it's worth. But I think you guys are the pros.
To throw you under the bus, sir. Yeah. To throw you under the bus a little bit here, we talked about mentors and mentorship and mentees, but with that, Fish for London trying.
I think he's calling you an old dog. Fish for London can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, I'm guessing he's meaning Alex or Jim, because it's not me, is it?
I'm the youngest one here. So basically, before Sean just shots fired and called me an old bastard, I was saying, like, we were talking about mentorship earlier, and we were talking about this is, what you do is a specialism within our industry. And forgive me saying it's a little bit of a niche. So people trying to get into what you do is going to be quite difficult. So where would you recommend that people who are interested in rope access, where do you start to look? Where do you learn? Or alternatively, would you be happy to mentor them?
If it's just rope access in general, then get in touch with IRATA, IRATA, International Rope Access Trade Association. They've got training centres up and down the country, very, very well run, very stringent. There's no cutting corners. There's no. It's actually, it's one of those. So it's a ticket that I do every 3 years, and we've all done things like IPAF and PASMA and little things like that. But the rope access one, every time it comes around, every 3 years, I think, blimey, it's one that always, and I'm always very upbeat and I'm always very positive, but it's one of those ones, it's really stringent, really, really stringent. And it's quite understandably, there's very little tolerance in, a pass and a foul, because if you're doing something dangerous, then you're going to foul. And it only takes one little tiny lapse in concentration. Something wasn't screwed up like a carabiner. You can get so many little minor faults when you're being graded. When I first started out with the bird work, Nigel Batten was someone that I would often contact when he was at Killgerm, and Nigel was a great help. Dare I say it, if people want to know, by all means, give me a shout. If they want to, like I say, if they're thinking about getting into bird control and they want a few pointers, I've worked with guys who've started off getting us to do every job, and then they've come out, it's their job. So we've they said, oh, do you mind if I come along? I'm like, it's your job. We're doing it for you, stay for as long or as little as you want. And we will give them some on-the-job training while we're doing the job for them. And then they build up a little bit of skill and knowledge, and they then can start taking on maybe some of the smaller jobs. They might never get up to the stage of doing the bigger jobs, but, again, not trying to sound holier than thou, but I'm more than happy to try and, give a little back or help people if they're looking to get into it. I was talking to my dad, and he was saying about a guy who wanted to learn how to become a thatcher, on these old cottages. And he knew a fella who went and worked for like a year and a half unpaid, under a master thatcher. So, yeah, if you're looking for unpaid work, give me a shout.
So good. Now, I'm glad you said that, because we always talk about...
I'm joking.
not the unpaid bit.
I promise you, hang on a second. I worked for a year for free to be a farrier, to get my apprenticeship.
There you go. That's it. Case in point,
But I'm slave labor aside, because we all want someone to work on the cheap. But with that, I'm glad that you said yes to mentor, because I think we need to have a bigger culture of this in our industry. We've all got a lot to learn, and we have, our industry is a lot of pests loosely tied together by rats and mice. Everyone deals with rats and mice, but very few people will deal with, moles, wildlife, insects.
I don't do any mole control or fox control,
There we go. But you do a lot of nets, and I'm saying that we're all pulled together in this industry. We all call ourselves pest managers or pest controllers. But the reality of it is we've got this little sort of like nugget that ties us together, and then this whole sphere of other shit.
Big umbrella.
Big umbrella. It's a big umbrella. And so the opportunities for collaboration to learn to, have mentor relationships with one another is phenomenally huge. So yes, I'm glad that you said reach out if you're interested in it, because I have no doubt people will. And when we put this up on Spotify, guys, we may put sort of like a link through to sort of like Jim's web page, just so if you do want to get in contact with him.
Feel free, absolutely. Yeah,
feel free.
No problem.
Good stuff. Right, Sean, have you got any other questions?
No, I think we just go to our last three, don't we? I think we've just got to go straight into it. What people don't know is we have conversations about the way things start and finish and So one of our things is we have to learn to, I'm doing to a lot of us, we have to learn that when it finishes, because what happens is we finish it and we talk for that 25 minutes. It's supposed to be bad for podcasting. When you say you're going to finish, you're supposed to finish, and we're like, we're going to finish. And like 25 minutes later, I was still talking about something that's went out of total fucking thing. So let's go and give us the three questions. I'll go first this week. Have you enjoyed your time on the podcast, Jim?
I've loved it. I've really liked it. It's been great actually. I was a little bit daunted beforehand. I was thinking I weren't quite sure, because obviously you're shooting from the hip. Did a little bit of media stuff before. We did do some programs and did the BBC a few times on the old breakfast sofa, and yeah, it's a little bit like, you know, you're a little bit unsure what's going to happen or what you're going to be asked. And thank you for treating me so well, you know. So I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
I have to say, just out of interest, are you saying that coming on our little podcast was as stressful as going on the sofa at the BBC? BBC.
Yeah. Do you know what? The first time I went on the sofa at the BBC was a fellow was talking about a squirrel that he'd drowned, or a squirrel had been drowned by a member of the public in a cage trap. And I was waiting to go on, and I'm sitting in the waiting room, and I'm there to talk about the legalities of, you know, dispatching squirrels and stuff. And there was a fella sat with me, and he was like, "Oh, what are you here to talk about?" And I said, "Squirrels." And he said, "Oh, so am I." And I said, "All right, yeah." And he was like, I'm not saying like in our industry, none of us, you know, I think a lot of us actually consider the welfare of the animal very much so. But it turned out this guy was like, you know, Mr. Squirrel Lover. And we were there talking about the legalities and, you know, of, you know, what we do. And it was like, right, you're on. And they threw us both on together on the same sofa. And I'm like, oh no. So I had to style it out a bit, you know.
Yeah. I know how you love your squirrels, but they are a pest. They are invasive.
They're
They
quite
do
tasty.
carry pox. Yeah, you say quite tasty. I've had squirrel stew, squirrel pie before, and I was not impressed. You know, there's not a lot of meat on a squirrel. I imagine it must have been like.
When you skin them, they do look like a rat when you skin them. Obviously, you know. So I think Elvis liked them deep fried, believe it or not, and that's not a joke.
Oh my God. Okay. I think people say that a squirrel is a rat with a good PR team behind it.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Right. So I'll come on to my question now, which is, give us a shameless plug. Something that you do, something you sell, something your company makes or does. Give us a plug to the pest management industry, but also to all of the other people that.
Well, I think the whole podcast has been a shameless plug, if I'm being honest. You know, we. Like I say, it's really, like I say, we're based in London, but we work all over the country. We, you know, my first day back on 6th of January is to look at a job in Scotland, up in Aberdeenshire. So we do have van, we'll travel, but no, we you know, shameless plug. Self praise is no praise, but we're good at what we do. We're very fair. What you see is what you get, you know, if you want to reach out, then give us a shout. So it's protexpest.co.uk, www.protexpest. Website is a couple of years old, it's a few years old now, but it's still working and that. And you can email me, jim@protexpest, or info@protexpest.co.uk. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to put that out there.
No, that's awesome. Absolutely fine. I'm just sort of like going to put that into the chat now, so anyone who's listening can have a go. That puts Sean.
The last question, which has been answered, but feel free to add to it or just reaffirm it. Who would you like to see on the podcast if we could get them on?
Have you had? I mean, is Adrian and Clive and that, are they still out there? Those guys doing their thing. Have they been on previous?
We'll look for them. No, they haven't been on previously, but we will search them out now.
I mean, Clive Bowes, absolute gent, lovely guy. I mean, I've just started wearing +1 goggles, and I noticed on the thing there, it's got on the Beauties and Beasties podcast. It's not .com Protex Pest. It's .co.uk. Because I think there is a Protex Pest over in the US. So
in Houston, I just found that.
Yeah, and we had a very irate woman who was moaning about the fact that we hadn't got rid of her termites on one of our reviews. So yeah, different one, but yeah.
I've got it done. No, it's Adrian and Clive are both absolute gents, and they're both winding down a little bit. I know Adrian's sort of like, I say not winding down. I don't want to do them a disservice. They haven't disappeared off, but over the years, as you said, they've become a little less visible. But Clive used to do a lot of the insect identification training for the whole industry. Adrian has been on a whole load of scientific committees with me for the last, God knows how many long.
I would also do a lot of clinical trials, wouldn't he? Do a lot of field trials. But I mean, I think Mark Mosley from The Apprentice. I think he was the one who sort of put my name forward for this. So thank you, Mark, for throwing me under the not the bus, but no, you guys have been very, very, very nice for so
good. It's just a bit of a sit down and a chat at the end of the day. It's not a grilling. Sometimes it turns into a grilling, but it's mostly just a sit down and a chat. So, Jim, thank you ever so much for coming on.
Thank you. Cheers,
People
guys. Good luck with
really
your house,
enjoyed it.
Sean. I hope you get it all sorted before Christmas.
Yeah, no, I think realistically we're just going to fall short of it. That was the ideal, but we're going to miss out on the carpets. So
we might be ready by next Christmas, the way we're going, but we'll see.
Yeah. If anyone hasn't done a house as a project, what you'll find is that you get 90% of it done in no time at all, and then the last bit just takes forever, like forever. I don't know why, but it takes just as long to do the little shitty bits as it does to do the big bits. It's a pain in the backside. But yeah, he was a good guest, Tim. Good guest.
He was absolutely good guest. Incidentally, as well, someone mentioned Asian hornets a little bit earlier on. If you remember, we did a competition at the beginning of the year, who could get closest to the Asian hornets. We had a couple of guesses. People who came closest, sadly enough, didn't follow all of the rules. So there's a bit of an internal debate going on at the moment as to how we are going to wrap this up. But
let's give it to them. So what happened was the guy who got closest doesn't follow or share the page at all, which was part of the conditions. And the person who was next in line was Clive Stewart.
Right.
Looks a little bit shit with Clive winning it, because Clive was sponsoring it, and Clive's one of my closest friends. And it looks like we're kind of robbing the person who didn't follow the rules to give the prize to Clive. So where do we go? What do we do? Do we accept them, or do we give it to the person who's won it? We'll leave that up to yous. I demand a recount. Who's that? NG? Demand a recount. Right. A recount. It'll take about 3 minutes. Everyone thought we were going to get 6,000 nests. So there was no. But I seen an article the other day. We're doing this where we didn't stop, Al, and it said, oh, they've halted the spread of Asian hornets, and you're like, no, they fucking haven't. It's just a bad year for them because we had no wasps, we had no nothing. Wait till it picks up. But yeah, there was very few, wasn't there, in real terms? So rollover. Can we go another 5 minutes? Stay there. Stay there.
Right, so ladies and gentlemen, not only has our guest disappeared, not only have we technically gone over the time for the podcast, but now Sean is pissed off. Oh, Jim's back again. Congratulations, Jim. Welcome back. You're in the madhouse now. Sean's got something to show us. He's run off screen. He's disappeared.
We have a competition.
We are living in chaos. Right, competition.
Competition. For Christmas, the lucky winner, and we're going to change the competitions coming up now. Keep watching. All you have to do is tell me what this is.
Hold on.
Oh no, I know exactly what that is.
Yeah, hang on a second. What it is and what it's used for, but best wrong answer.
There's only going to be one wrong answer repeated over and over.
Best wrong answer for this, and the lucky winner will win it. Kindly donate someone said.
What's it made out of?
Oh, hang on. So there's going to be a lot of people listening to this rather than watching it online, so they may not see what you're hearing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to describe this for you in probably the most awkward way possible. So it is roughly 10 to 12 inches long. It has it's not. How big is that? I can't see perspective all off.
Say 8 inches.
8. No, say a generous 8. It is ribbing on the bottom half and a handle.
That looks like a handle at the bottom.
Yeah. So it's a handle with ribbing, which has got a peace loop on the bottom, so you don't lose it. It doesn't fly away when you're using it. And the top half to third looks like it's made out of a silicone rubber, hard rubber, which is smooth to the touch and rounded at the top. So from that description, guys, what do you think I have just described?
It's not a professional priest, is it, for killing fish?
Best wrong answer wins.
Best wrong answer will win. So there we go, guys. It's definitely not somewhere to hang your hat.
Right.
So there we go.
I don't think I'm going to get any further with that one.
No, let's leave it as it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, guys, girls, and girls of all ages, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Next week will be Sean and I just chatting shit for an hour or so, catching up on the air, having a look back at some of our guests. But for everyone involved, please say a big thank you to Jim for joining us this evening.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
And yes, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Should we invite some of the people watching next week on if they've got something sensible to say?
Even if they don't have something sensible to say. Next week is a free-for-all. We'll put the link to StreamYard up. Anyone who wants to come on, anyone wants to have a chat, anyone that wants to shout at us, go. We'll do it. Let's bring it on. But from all of us here, thank you ever so much. And good Christmas.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.